You awaken to the whisper of wood being cut. Each scrape and thud outside your window is an echo in your chest. For a moment, you imagine the noise is carpenters mending the tower's walls, until you remember there's only one thing they could be building at dawn. Before we begin, a quick word to those watching across time zones and continents. Whether you're in London or Lahore, Boston or Bucharest, take a breath and picture this dawn in 1536. The air thick with mist, the future Queen Elizabeth still unborn, and England holding its breath. If you love exploring history's most haunting hours, remember to like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Together, we keep the ghosts of history alive. The first light of May 19th creeps through the narrow slit of Anne Boleyn's chamber in the Tower of London. The pale sun glances off the gilded crucifix on her table, the same cross she has clutched for hours. Sir William Kingston, the tower's constable, notes her composure with disbelief. "Never saw I a lady bear herself so bravely," he writes. But beneath that composure, a storm stirs. Anne has not slept. All night she has drifted between laughter and prayer, between hope and the certainty of death. A faint rustle beyond the door, the shuffle of silk. Her ladies-in-waiting, themselves prisoners of her tragedy, kneel as she rises. The Queen straightens her French gown, the deep black velvet chosen with care. Her executioner, she had been told, was a swordsman of Calais. She had smiled when she heard that, the irony not lost on her. The French sword, not the English axe. A cleaner death for a queen who had brought England to its knees for the promise of a French-style court. She kneels to pray. Her words, quiet and unsteady, rise like smoke. "Jesu, receive my soul." She repeats it again and again, as if to convince herself the plea will be heard. Through the window the sound of gulls cuts through the fog, their cries mingling with the carpenter's hammers. Every strike drives home the shape of her ending. Outside, the scaffold rises. It is modest, even graceful, draped in black cloth, surrounded by armed guards. The sword has been wrapped in linen, hidden from the crowd's view until the moment comes. The Frenchman, summoned at great cost, tests its edge on a straw bundle. He bows once to no one in particular. It is a ritual, and like all Tudor rituals, it must be performed beautifully. By mid-morning, the tower hums with whispers. Courtiers and servants gather at the windows. Some pray, others merely watch. To them, Anne is both villain and spectacle. The woman who seduced a king, unseated a queen, and tore a church from Rome. Now she is about to pay the price. When Kingston enters her chamber to announce the hour, Anne smiles. "I heard say the executioner was very good, and I have but a little neck." She laughs softly and touches her throat, a gesture caught forever in legend. Then she grows solemn. "I have done no wrong, but my lord the king will have it so, and I submit me to his will." The path from her cell to the scaffold is short, less than 100 steps, yet history stretches it into eternity. The cobblestones glisten with dew. Each footfall is a whisper of finality. The wind stirs the hem of her gown. She pauses once, lifting her eyes to the gray sky. No tears, no trembling, only the strange calm of a woman who has passed through every shade of despair and found a stillness on the other side. At the platform, she kneels on the straw-covered boards. The crowd holds its breath. Some say she looked to the heavens, others claim she fixed her gaze on the Frenchman's feet, unwilling to meet his eyes. Her voice, when it comes, is clear and formal. "Good Christian people, I am come hither to die, according to law. I do not accuse any man. I pray God save the king and send him long to reign over you, for a gentler prince there never was." The lie sits like frost on her lips, spoken not for truth, but for dignity. The executioner waits for his cue. Tradition demands a distraction, a gesture, a small kindness. He whispers to his assistant, "Bring me my sword." The phrase is a ruse. The blade is already in his hand. As Anne turns her head slightly, thinking the moment delayed, He steps forward and swings. No scream, no sound. Only the dull thud of a body collapsing into silence. The French sword, sharp as justice, severs not only flesh but legend. The crowd gasps, and then, as if ashamed, falls utterly quiet. Kingston records that her lips moved even after the blow. Some swear she prayed still. Her ladies gather the fragments of her remains into a chest that once held arrows. No coffin had been prepared. A queen reduced to haste and straw. By noon, the scaffold is dismantled, the blood scrubbed away. The tower resumes its stillness as though nothing had happened. But something had. A shadow had been born, not of Anne Boleyn the woman, but of what she would become. For in that single, silent stroke, the kingdom's fate was rewritten. And somewhere, in the unseen distance, a child stirred in the womb, one who would grow to wear the crown her mother never truly held. The sword's echo fades, but the question remains. Was this justice, or simply the sound of fear dressed in ceremony? The ink dries faster than the blood. In the spring of 1536, power moves not through armies or swords, but through whispers, signatures, and sealed letters carried at night through palace corridors. The air inside Whitehall smells of candle smoke and fear, two things that linger long after truth has died. 5 days. That is all it takes. 5 days for Anne Boleyn, crowned Queen of England barely 3 years earlier, to be remade into a criminal fit for execution. The machinery of her destruction hums quietly at first, an invisible device built from ambition and vengeance, and at its center stands Thomas Cromwell. Cromwell is no villain of passion, he is a craftsman of survival. A man who has risen from blacksmith's son to the king's right hand, he knows that favor is a blade that cuts both ways. For months he has felt the queen's disdain, her mocking wit that turns the council chamber into a battlefield. And behind her laughter, the greatest danger of all, Henry's restlessness. The king's eyes have wandered to Jane Seymour, the pale and silent courtier who listens where Anne argues. By late April, the tide is turning. Anne's miscarriage, her enemies' murmurs, Henry's wounded pride, all of it curdles into opportunity. Cromwell begins to collect threads, a flirtation here, a rumor there, an overheard word twisted into treason. His letters reveal no rage, no joy, only calculation. "I shall work for the king's pleasure," he writes, and those words are as fatal as any blade. The first arrest comes on May Day. It is supposed to be a celebration, a tournament of chivalry in Greenwich, filled with banners and brass. Henry sits in the royal gallery beside Anne, their faces arranged in a brittle smile. When her champion, Sir Henry Norris, rides to her token, the king suddenly rises. He leans to a courtier and speaks a few curt words. Moments later, Norris is taken away, bewildered. The music stops. The pageantry collapses into silence. By nightfall, Anne herself is summoned to the Tower. Kingston's records show her confusion. "Master Kingston," she pleads, "why am I here?" But even as she speaks, the trap has already closed. George Boleyn, her brother, follows within hours, accused of unspeakable crimes, charges so grotesque they silence even her enemies. One by one, the names fall. Weston, Brereton, Smeaton. Each man questioned, coerced, undone. Mark Smeaton, the court musician, breaks first. Whether through torture or terror, no one knows. His confession is the keystone upon which Cromwell builds the entire case. He said the Queen did love him, one account whispers. The phrasing is vague enough to damn her and safe enough to please the king. Cromwell does not need proof. He needs permission. The trial, when it comes, is less a proceeding than a performance. The great hall at Westminster is hung with tapestries, the crowd dense with courtiers. Anne stands alone in her ermine-trimmed gown, her hands clasped, her face pale but composed. The charges are read aloud: adultery, incest, conspiracy against the king. each accusation heavier than the last. When asked for her defense, she speaks clearly. "I have been a faithful wife to His Majesty, ever constant in my love, though he hath not always been so to me." The words hang in the air, a quiet defiance, but the verdict is already written in another room, sealed before the trial began. Outside, London's rumor mills churn. The people who once adored her now whisper of witchcraft, of poison, of seduction. They say she bewitched the king into sin. They say she mocked his manhood. Each rumor is a stone thrown into water, rippling outward until truth itself drowns. Cromwell watches it all unfold from the shadows. His face betrays nothing. He has built this edifice of accusation with meticulous care, each lie mortared with necessity. To some, he is the king's savior, restoring order, removing chaos. To others, he is the silent executioner who kills with parchment instead of steel. And Henry. The king shifts uneasily under the weight of his own desire. He signs the death warrants with the same hand that once traced love letters ending in "Your loyal servant and heart, H.R." He does not read what he signs. Perhaps he cannot. For men like Henry, remorse comes only when the body is cold. On May 15th, Anne and her brother are tried together in the Tower. The room is suffocating with perfume and power. When George is condemned, he bows slightly and says, "Masters, I doubt not but ye have condemned yourselves." The words sting more than a sword. Anne hears the sentence that follows and simply nods. "I shall not die before my time," she says softly. "None can do me wrong without doing greater harm to themselves." Outside, the Thames flows sluggishly beneath gray skies. Barges carry officials to and fro, each bearing orders written in Cromwell's unmistakable hand. The machine has done its work. By the time Anne returns to her chamber, the world she ruled has already erased her name. Yet, even in her fall, something resists erasure. The ink dries, the witnesses disperse, the Tower doors close, but a question remains, murmuring through the corridors of power. Did England's most brilliant minister save the realm, or simply teach it how to destroy its queens? The answer waits, as all things in Tudor England do, with a blade in the shadows. When the sword falls, it does not silence her. It only changes the echo. Anne Boleyn's head rolls into straw, but her story continues to whisper through stone, through parchment, through the bloodline of kings. The Tower keeps her body. England inherits her ghost. The year is 1536. Within hours of Anne's death, the world rearranges itself around the empty space she leaves behind. Jane Seymour steps into the Queen's apartments before Anne's body has cooled. Henry VIII, dressed in white and gold, rides out hawking the next morning, his laughter carrying on the wind. The court breathes again, too loudly, too quickly, as if to drown out the memory of a woman who had burned too brightly. But memories like hers do not fade. They ferment. In the weeks that follow, rumors rise like smoke from the ashes. Some say her heart beat for minutes after death. Others swear they saw her ghost pacing the Tower green, clutching her severed head like a lantern. Even her enemies cannot stop speaking her name. "Never was there woman so unfortunate," one courtier mutters. Yet within this misfortune lies a transformation no one anticipates. For Anne's legacy is not written in the record of her sins, but in the survival of her daughter. Elizabeth Tudor, a fragile infant when her mother died, becomes the vessel through which Anne's ghost will take its vengeance on history. The child grows in shadows, watched by servants who whisper of her mother's grace and temper. She inherits the sharp eyes, the quick wit, and the fire that once both enthralled and enraged a king. When Henry's other wives rise and fall, Elizabeth remains. When her father dies, she endures. And when, years later, she takes the throne in 1558, the circle closes. The daughter of the executed queen becomes the ruler of the realm that condemned her. Yet Elizabeth never speaks Anne's name in public. not once. She carries her mother's memory like a relic sealed in glass, sacred, untouchable. But in her policies, her poise, her relentless intellect, Anne's spirit hums beneath the surface. "I know I have the body of a weak and feeble woman," Elizabeth declares at Tilbury, "but I have the heart and stomach of a king." The line between them blurs, the mother's ghost breathing through the daughter's voice. Beyond the court, Anne's myth takes on new shapes. Protestant reformers claim her as a martyr, a saint of the New English faith. In secret circles, her story becomes scripture, the queen who died so that England might be freed from Rome. Painters soften her features, turning the sharp-nosed, dark-eyed woman into an icon of gentility. Ballads call her the Lily of the Tower, her death a sacrifice for divine destiny. But others keep her darker image alive, the witch, the temptress, the serpent who whispered sin into the king's ear. In Catholic accounts, she remains the woman who brought heresy and ruin to Christendom. Centuries later, writers and dramatists will debate which is true, the sinner or the saint, the victim or the architect. Perhaps she was all of them. Perhaps that is why her ghost endures. The Tower of London itself becomes her shrine. Visitors report cold draughts and faint weeping near the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, where her unmarked grave lies among the bones of the condemned. Guards swear they've seen a woman in Tudor dress walking the battlements at midnight, her face pale and serene, her neck encircled by light. Even the ravens, they say, fall silent when she passes. But the truest haunting is not spectral. It is historical. Every decision Elizabeth makes, every triumph and fear, bears the weight of her mother's execution. The ghost of Anne Boleyn is not a shade in the tower, but a pulse within the crown itself. The Reformation, the rise of England's empire, the birth of a nation, all of it built upon a scaffold in 1536, and still the question lingers: did Henry ever regret? In his later years, swollen and furious, he kept Anne's portrait locked away, yet never destroyed it. Some say he would stare at it in silence, the painted eyes meeting his with quiet accusation. In those moments, perhaps he remembered her laughter, her daring words, her final prayer. Or perhaps he remembered only the fear she inspired, the fear that no king could master forever. 400 years later, her story refuses to rest. Historians dig through records, playwrights resurrect her voice, and filmmakers reimagine her smile. Each generation rewrites Anne Boleyn, but none can erase her. She exists between the lines of power and desire, truth and invention, the eternal ghost in England's crown. And if you walk the Tower Green on a still morning, when the fog curls low and the ravens fall silent, you might swear you hear her whisper, not of vengeance, not of sorrow, but of survival. For power may kill, it may silence, exile, erase, but it never quite buries the truth.